Welcome back to Wojo's Greenhouse and Garden Center here in Ortonville. I'm George, and we're ready for another episode of the Green Team. We are now into August. It won't be long before school will be starting. The cornfield next door has ears of corn growing on it, and it won't be long before we'll be cutting those for corn stalks for fall decorating. But until we do that, there are some things we want to talk about. And that would be, first of all, and we talk about it every week, is watering. Watering seems to be something that some people get and then some people don't get. I compare this to being a newborn parent. And I talk to people when they buy a plant. If you have kids, you realize that in the first years of their life, you didn't miss a feeding or a watering. Well, my plants are just like that. They're living things. They need attention. They need care. Some people think that watering once or twice a week is adequate, and in the heat and dryness of the summer, that is not the case. So again, to please water your plants. And as the owner, when I talked to him about this, he said, be sure and water at the roots, at the base of the plant where the roots are. Don't water up on the foliage because a lot of it will be deflected away from the ground and where the water needs to go. We talked about gator bags earlier, and I'll mention those again if you have newly planted trees. This is an excellent way of providing up to 15 to 20 gallons of water at the base of the tree. It takes about 5 to 8 hours to have this percolate down into the soil, and it's an excellent way of getting water to your plants. This would be a benefit if the owners of two hydrangea trees were returned this week, and we're reviving them now. We've soaked them in water and we're revitalizing them, but people don't realize again that you have to water, you have to take care. And we mentioned hydrangeas. They're our most popular plant. We sell more hydrangeas here than any other category of plant, but that's the one that people have the biggest nightmare with. I've talked in the planting segment that we did last time, the idea of soaking the plants, taking the plants and putting it in a garbage can half filled with water, submersing the plants to get those roots wet. I had people this past week that called and said my plants aren't doing well, and I said they've only been in a week or so. Dig them up again, take them out of the ground, put them in, again, a tub of water, rehydrate them, get them back vital again, and once you get them wet, keep them wet. If they dry out, it's much more difficult to bring them back and revive them. So watering, again, is the first topic that is an ongoing issue with our guests, but hopefully we'll be able to make the point and educate our guests so that they can be successful with their plants. Japanese beetles are on the decline, which is good. At my house, the Japanese beetles were not that bad this season, and I haven't had that many people talk about them here. A few folks have had issues with them, but overall, I think this year's Japanese beetle problem was minimal, and with that's a good note. If folks are interested in protecting or an ounce of prevention, the Grub-X or grub control can be applied to your lawn both now and again in the spring, and that will help to minimize the grubs that will develop into the Japanese beetles, and it'll also help protect your turf. One thing we find that when you get grubs in there, skunks love to go and find them. And you find these pockets of dirt where the skunks have gone and dug down to find the grubs. So you have a much nicer looking turf if you can keep the grubs out of it. So now would be a time to consider the Grub-X for putting on your turf. We talked early in the spring about oak wilt, and this is the idea of not pruning your oak trees. Now we're late enough in the season, I think we're okay with that, and if you need to prune an oak tree, I think the time would be okay for that. A topic that we're going to talk about in continuing weeks here, because it's going to go on for the next weeks and probably the next couple months has to do with protecting the trunks of your trees from bucks. Two things that occur within the deer population. The first thing is that the newly developed antlers are covered with a velvety texture covering that the bucks want to rub off. This doesn't take that long. They normally can get it accomplished within a day or so. But the thing that happens later on in the fall, and it has to do with their reproductive cycles and the mating, the dominant bucks begin to rub their antlers, and this is where the major damage is done on the trees. You can see this picture here with this buck examining a tree, and half the bark is taken right off of it. That tree, the chances of that tree surviving are minimal because of the buck damage. I was doing some research on this, and that for dominant bucks that are, again, high hormone level, high testosterone level in the mating season, will make as many as 5,000 rubs within an acre area, establishing their territory and their dominance. It also helps to trigger the females to become in their estrus cycles to be common, and again for that mating season. So that process will happen over the next couple of months, probably September, October, and that's why we must protect our trees. We sell the tree guards here. We talked about these before. This would be for your smaller trees. This works well. If you have larger diameter trees, I'd encourage you to find a protection for it. Corrugated drain pipe might work for the bigger trees. Some people thought of the idea excuse me, of putting chicken wire or some kind of a wire barrier, and when the bucks rub on that, it just acts like sandpaper. So the idea of a wire protection is not advisable when protecting the trees from the bucks. You want to use something that is more durable, something like this plastic that will help protect the trunk and give it some protection. Next topic I want to talk about is a fun one. This comes up a little over a week from now on the 21st of this month. It's our first total eclipse of the sun that we've had in many, many years. And I'm going to reference a article from the Parade magazine. Bill Nye, the Science Guy, was talking about this. He said that normally the eclipses happen on a fairly regular basis, but we only see them in this area very infrequently. I think the next one is going to be something like 97 years from now. About on the 21st, between 1 and 2:30 in the afternoon, there will be roughly a 80 to 90% eclipse of the sun. The sidelight of this is interesting that pets may get confused, not knowing whether it's night or not. Another issue we have here at the store, people coming in talking about magnolia scale. These are the white bumps that you see on the stems, and we have the Bear product that helps to take care of that. So we'll take a break and we'll be back with the next segment. Thank you.
If you like to spend time in the outdoors, then there's a good chance you could come across a young fawn. And normally, young fawns are found alone because their mothers place them there to be safe. A young fawn has very little scent, and the mother will only come in just a couple times a day in order to feed it, and leaves quickly so that she doesn't leave behind her scent. So if you find a young fawn curled up in the grass, that's actually the safest place for it to be. Enjoy that moment, but don't touch it or move it. The mother will be back soon.
Only licensed rehabilitators can legally possess wildlife, so please leave wildlife in the wild. For a list of licensed rehabilitators throughout the state, visit michigan.gov/wildlife.
In our next segment, we're going to talk about a continuation of the issues that our guests are having here at the Garden Center. Last week we showed pictures of a fall webworm that were devouring one of the trees here adjacent to the Garden Center, and I had guests bring in a branch that again had that same webbing and the same worms that were at work in their tree. And that ties into a topic that we talked about a while ago, and that's growing degree days. Growing degree days has to do with the heat during a growing season, and whether it's ahead of schedule or it's behind. But folks that are in horticulture departments at universities have studied this and can predict when various pests will hatch and become present. And there are charts I was able to find today that they have for ornamental shrubs, fruit trees, evergreen trees. For example, Frank Genovese over at Candy Cane Christmas Tree Farm has to pay very particular attention to the growing degree days for his crop so that he can predict and know when to be on the lookout for them. We had a quote we used early on from Gertrude Jekyll. The idea of gardening, a garden is a good teacher. It teaches patience and careful watchfulness. It teaches industry and thrift, and above all, it teaches trust. This is the idea of paying attention to what's happening within your garden so that you can stay on top of issues that are potentially affecting your plants. Back to the growing degree days. The report that comes out from Michigan State, and this is put out on a weekly basis, I've mentioned this before, this mentions the growing degree days. That's what they use as their benchmark for wanting or for knowing what to look for. For example, the apple crops. This time we have the brown marinated stink bugs. We have apple maggot that are now present. We have aphids and the black rot that are also affecting the apple crop. And that's related again to those growing degree days, that the farmers can have an idea of when these nuisances are going to appear, and we can do the same thing in our own gardens. The biggest issue that farmers are facing in the area is the rain, either abundance of or lack of. Up in the Midland area, we heard that there was a state of emergency and funding relief for 4 counties up there that were flooded. But yet in our area, southeastern Michigan, there are some farms that have adequate water. There are other farms that have gone weeks without water, and crops are being lost because of that. So water is another variable that comes into play. It's interesting when I read this report on a weekly basis to see again how everything is tied together. Nature is very systematic, and by following those growing degree days, we can get a good handle on the issues that farmers are going to be dealing with. Another pest that is new to the area just in the past 7 years is something called the spotted wing Drosophila. It is Drosophila, when I studied biology up at Michigan State, was a fruit fly. The common fruit fly goes by the name of Drosophila, but this one is a spotted wing Drosophila, and it is really a nuisance for fruit farmers. This has only been in Michigan since 2010. It came to the United States through the Pacific Northwest about 5 years before that. This is another one of those imported nuisances that came from overseas and now is something that we have to be on the lookout here. So the spotted wing Drosophila is a relatively new nuisance that farmers are having to deal with. Tomato issues, tomato diseases. We find that there are a number of diseases that affect tomatoes in your home garden. One here described in this picture is early blight. And when I looked at this handout, this product that we sell here called BioSafe is a excellent product for being on top of bacterial issues, fungal issues, and keeping your plants healthy. So that if you have a garden and you want to minimize the effect of these various diseases that your crops will get, keep this product in mind. BioSafe is an excellent product. It's one we've had here for about the last 5 years, and it's doing a very nice job. Another thing I want to talk about, as I did some research on this, is a topic called companion planting. This is a graft, and I will have it here, and I'm sure we'll have this on the screen, and I'll have it available here in the store. This is a listing of the various vegetable crops and which ones, again, the color coding, plants that grow well together, plants that don't do well together, beneficial to the garden in general, combination helps bug control, and this will help carrots have a good flavor. So this is a good reference for gardeners to know how to organize your garden. By using these companion plants, you can minimize the pests. There are certain plants that if you plant near your other vegetables, you'll minimize the nuisances that you have simply by the whole topic of companion planting. And this is something that I think is something that gardeners can tune into. It's been around. When I was doing research, this was kind of like an old wives' tale, but it turned out the old wives' tales had a lot of merit. And there's a lot of significant information in which plants either grow well together or which ones don't grow well together. Last thing I want to talk about is a calendar for August. Michigan State University Cooperative Extension here in Oakland County puts together a monthly calendar of different events that you can be doing in your garden. And some of the things, for example, for flowers, for bulbs, they recommend drawing up plans for fall planting. Figure out how you want to arrange your bulbs and what you want your fall gardens to look like. And later in the month, you can begin planting those fall bulbs. Annuals, the idea is that if growth appears pale and slow, continue to fertilize. It's important that you continue to fertilize. Perennials, the peonies, iris, and daylilies can be divided. In roses, you don't want to prune after Labor Day. Lawns, now is a good time to reestablish your lawn with top seeding and watering. And now for trees and shrubs, avoid fertilizing. So we'll take a break now and continue with the next segment. Thank you. For the third segment, we're going to begin talking about a topic that I've really gotten interested in. I've always enjoyed watching birds, but I mentioned that group in Clarkston that meets on the fourth Wednesday of every month at the Gateway. And this past week, we had a young lady from the State Audubon Society come in and do a program. And she talked about several books that are written by an author, Doug Talmy. Doug Talmy out of, I believe, Maryland, the University of Maryland. This was his first book, The Living Landscape, and his most recent book is Bringing Nature Home. And she referenced both of these books, and I would highly recommend them for folks that are interested in having a wildlife habitat within your lawn area or within your home site. This book is an excellent resource, as well as this book, Landscaping with Native Plants of Michigan. This is a real fine resource for folks in what plants are native to the area. And we find in using Telme's work that native plants make a significant difference. This is, again, showing his book, but this chart shows the woody plants ranked by ability to support insects. And it starts off with the common oak tree. The common oak tree and the oak species will support 534 varieties of caterpillars and insects that birds go after, that are necessary for birds to survive. The oak being native to Michigan, this being contrasted with, let's say, a ginkgo tree that was brought in from another country that attracts 3 insects. And this whole chart shows the primarily native varieties that do an excellent job of providing that necessary food source for birds. So this again comes from Telme's book, Bringing Nature Home. Another chart I have, this is one I found, shrubs and trees to plant for birds. This gives an idea of the various birds that are attracted to various trees and shrubs. And this is an excellent reference showing both food and shelter for these. So if you're looking for that kind of a resource, that works. And something, the young lady that was presenting was Rochelle Rourke. And Rochelle authored this pamphlet. This pamphlet put up by Michigan Audubon is Michigan Native Plants for Bird-Friendly Landscapes. If you go on Michigan Audubon's website and search this in their publications, you can download a PDF of this. You don't necessarily have to have this pamphlet in your hand. You can get the same information from the PDF that is available on the Michigan Audubon Society's website. So I would recommend these as an excellent resource if you're interested in birding and having birds attracted to your landscape. Another topic, we're going to shift from birds and we're going to go to a topic dealing with plant health. This ties in a little bit with our quote from Gertrude Jekyll about being observant and patient. And also, August is Tree Check Month, and especially for the Asian longhorn beetle. We talked about the Asian longhorn beetle in an earlier show. We'll mention it again here. The upper pictures are the Asian longhorn beetle, both male and female, and down below is one that is sometimes confused for them. It is not the Asian longhorn beetle. This is a white spotted pine sawyer. So not to be confused with the lower ones, this is the one that we want to keep out of Michigan. So far this has been in 4 to 5 different regions within the country, and they have been able to be controlled by more or less quarantining areas and keeping the beetle contained. They do a clear cut of acres of surrounding property to minimize it. There is a forest alert, pest alert, that the Michigan Department of Natural Resources has put out. In the fall of the year, the female makes an indentation in the bark of trees, and this is where she lays her eggs. After the eggs hatch, the larvae embed themselves within the tree, And after they mature in the springtime, they emerge and leave a fairly large hole. This is, as you see, compared with a penny, this is a very, very large hole that the Asian longhorn beetle will leave when they emerge from the tree. And if you have this, you know that you have a major, major issue. This is one that we again want to reference what we talked about with the idea of don't move firewood. Use the firewood where you buy it and not transport it. And we showed earlier the chart for the Asian longhorn beetle and the trees that this will affect and decimate. The ash tree, the birch, the elm, the horse chestnut, the katsura, maple varieties, mimosa, mountain ash, London plane tree, poplars, and willows. Basically what the emerald ash borer didn't get, this one will. So if this does come into Michigan, it is going to be major, and we want to keep it out. So this is a month. August is observe your tree, inspect your trees to make sure we don't have any telltale remains of this active insect. And also just basically using the principles of this, again the quotation, be observant in your garden. The last thing I want to talk about is sharing with you some pictures. We weren't able to, I mentioned this, but we weren't able to show it. This is an overhead picture that was done by drone. One of our employees has a drone and took some pictures. This was a picture taken a couple weeks ago, and our theme here is Color Your World here at Wojo's. We are very excited about the quality and varieties of plants that we offer in all of our departments, trees and shrubs, perennials, or in the annual department. We provide that opportunity for gardeners to have wonderful color. And with that, I'm just sharing a few more pictures. This was from earlier in the spring when the shrubs were just beginning to come into their prime, the color starting to come out. And the hydrangeas in these pictures are much, much smaller. But finally, what we see in this last aerial shot in this area, this bed right here is filled with the hydrangeas that people enjoy here at Wojo's. So in winding down, we keep up with the theme that we use periodically here, Coloring Your World here at Wojo's. A fun place to come and shop. We enjoy seeing you. Stay cool. See you next time.